We have some absolutely massive news happening in today's video. A top AEW star could be headed out of the company, and it's actually really shocking. Before we get to that, we got to talk about Vince McMahon. You may have heard TMZ reported that Vince McMahon had major spinal surgery last week. Fightful Select had reported that they have now confirmed that appears to be the case. The surgery lasted about 5 hours. It was a pretty intensive one. A lot of people believe that this can mean Vince McMahon is taking some time away from WWE, obviously due to recovery. And look, this is a really interesting thing because we know Vince McMahon is back in the WWE. We know Vince McMahon has his hand in WWE creative. We know that Vince McMahon is involved in certain ways, in certain levels. And honestly, like, the product is so hot right now that I'm not too bothered by Vince McMahon being back. Like, we've always known that Vince McMahon was in the picture the entire time, but now it's a little bit more prevalent than ever. But obviously, look, like, a lot of people are going to talk about booking and creative and stuff like that. A major spinal surgery is nothing to joke around about or to, you know, kind of like discredit or whatever. It's obviously a serious surgery. And on this channel, we talk about health before wealth. So definitely best of luck to Vince, and you know, work shit comes later. Obviously, in this case, health matters. So hopefully all is well there. But the reason why it's interesting is because Vince McMahon has apparently nixed the idea of the way. And this is definitely getting people talking. A lot of people are talking about this. Sean Ross Sapp was talking during a Fightful Q&A session, and basically he revealed that Vince McMahon ended up scrapping all the plans for the way. Basically, that's pretty much it, right? So we knew WWE had Candice LeRae, Indy Hartwell, Johnny Gargano, Dexter Lumis on the main roster together. They're teasing that the way is coming back, and Vince McMahon basically vinced this entire idea. Look, I think a lot of people love the way because of NXT. Personally speaking, I like the group, but I don't feel like the group should have been like this massive faction or anything like that. I just like the idea of more factions in wrestling in general, but it doesn't have to be like this big thing, big ordeal. Obviously, I'm more in favor of Johnny Gargano and Ciampa being together than the way. But I'm curious as to why Vince McMahon made this decision. And more importantly, with Vince being out due to recovery, will WWE try to sneak this one in there, right? I think that's a very big question to ask. Do you think Triple H and everybody else will try to get this going? Look, like I said, the product is hot. The product is doing very well. There's not much that I would change, but this would be my complaint towards Vince McMahon. It's not like he did anything else with these guys to really make them feel different or better. So why not just do the way until you have actual concrete plans? I don't know. To me, that's always been a thing, right? Like, until you have concrete plans of what you want to do, there's nothing wrong with you doing this. So why change it? Why remove it? Why do something like that? Obviously, we knew Johnny Gargano was injured as well, so that kind of threw a wrench in plans. But WWE does appear to still want to do Ciampa and Johnny Gargano anyways. So I don't think it's that big of a deal, but of course, it's just kind of like a head scratcher, if that makes sense. Nonetheless, we got to turn our attention to the AEW Women's Division. Boy, oh boy, this is crazy. So for those who don't know, professional wrestler Lufisto came out. She put out a tweet a couple days ago. This sparked a lot of talk, a lot of conversation, basically opened up a can of worms. She says it's cute how people blame booking for a bad women's division, talent with too much power, basically talent trash talking potential employees so they never get in as soon as they walk in. It starts here. Sincerely, the one you called a effing French Canadian asshole. Sean Ross Sapp then ended up chiming in a few days later saying a lot. Basically, the question was in regards to people being frustrated backstage on the booking. He said a lot of the women are, but there's also a lot of people who are very aloof and like, why bother type of stuff. Obviously, you're never going to win those people over no matter what. So basically what this comes down to is the women, there's people backstage unhappy with the booking, right? For those who don't know, Lufisto's tweet is essentially based off of Britt Baker, which for a long time, it kind of seems like all fingers point to her as being like the backstage bully, whatever it may be. Here's the problem with he say, she say. We haven't seen this. We haven't heard it with our own ears. It's hard to judge and hard to make assumptions, and I don't like doing that, right? I really don't. But the premise of these articles coming out is that everything points to Britt Baker And everything points to Tony Khan and AEW not really having a grasp on their women's division. And to be honest with you, I understand the frustration. I understand why fans are frustrated. I understand when I'm watching Dynamite why there is a high resolution close-up shot of a sign that says book the women's division better. Like, these are the types of things that are understandable, because if you've been watching the product since day one, this is one of the big flaws for AEW. We could talk about TNT Championship and being a hot potato and stuff like that, but at least the TNT Championship is always like a focus, right? Like, this isn't even a focus. The women's division is clearly not a focus. They tried some stuff with the outsiders. It seemed like it was working in the beginning, and then just as always, things really got off track. Jamie Hayter is out with an injury. She's not coming back. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality. She's not coming back for the rest of the year. It doesn't seem like that's the case. It seems like she's missing All In. They don't really have storylines for women to build women up. And the reality is, I mean, I'm going to say this a million times over and over and over again, but WWE and AEW, they got to get better with this women's division. And it's not about booking women on the same level of men or anything like that. It's simply as just like, you have a lot of talented people on your roster. And you look at NXT, and their women's division is always booked. There's always meaningful storylines, regardless of a title being involved. You look at Impact Wrestling, and their Knockouts division is booked incredibly strong. And it's not for the title. I can't seem to grasp why these companies are having a hard time doing it. And the reality is, you have a ton of talented women on your roster. You have some really good workers, but the storylines aren't there. The focus isn't there. It makes sense as to why people are frustrated, especially when you hear of the rumors of the backstage issues. And I think that really leads me to our final topic, which is Jade Cargill. And this, to me, is a very, very interesting thing. I genuinely didn't expect this. But basically, Dave Meltzer has come out, and he's talking about this belief that Jade Cargill will not be staying in AEW. This is where it gets really interesting. Dave Meltzer noted that Jade Cargill's AEW status is still unclear. Nothing past she's not considering coming back is what she said, which was the last thing we heard. She wanted to take some time off. Sometimes I feel like, boy, it's like they pushed her and pushed her and pushed her and pushed her. Like they never put her in the big matches. Then she's gone, like a multi-year push. And yet they gave her that one belt, but she never, I don't know if it's like there's like this thing again. Did she never wrestle Britt Baker? You know, she never wrestled Toni Storm. It's almost like they kept her away from them and now she's gone. So will she be back? I mean, she's got a storyline to come back to. They didn't, you know, she lost, but she lost in a way where she had a gripe, but she's gone. She's never made the gripe. I don't know what the future holds for her. She's the only one who probably knows. Yeah, I mean, maybe she's still figuring it out. Look, trying to dissect Dave Meltzer's words, whether you listen to them or read them, it's always a little interesting. But this idea that Jade Cargill could very well be leaving the company is interesting. If you watch this channel, if you know anything that I talk about in regards to Jade Cargill, I'm very high on her. I think she's a very, very good athlete. I think she's a very good superstar. I think she is one of the top people in the company. She is everything that WWE wants. I look at Jade Cargill, Charlotte Flair as a very big marquee matchup for a WWE pay-per-view. I think she has everything. People will disagree because she ain't doing 450 splashes and a whole bunch of crazy shit, but that's not what she needs to do. She commands attention when she's in the ring. And realistically, guys, here's the problem. It goes back to the booking of the women's division. She lost this historic reign and not one mention of it after. I don't know. It's weird. If Jade Cargill isn't coming back to AEW, it's a huge loss for AEW. If she stays in AEW, it's a big win for AEW. But a lot of people believe that she could be headed on her way out. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below.